Hello and welcome to the One Marketing Thing podcast. Now, today's topic is navigating the analytics landscape for enhanced decision making. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Antionette Blake, and you're watching the One Marketing Thing podcast. Now, you may know that we started this podcast to help our digital marketers by providing them with expert advice from industry leaders who has decades of experience. And today we have one of those veteran experts. We have Greg Cobin. And Greg is going to be talking about navigating the analytics landscape for enhanced decision making. But before we get into that, let me introduce you to Greg. Greg, welcome to the One Marketing Thing podcast. Share a little bit about yourself before we get into our topics.
So I work for a company called MarketReach. We are a B2B tech company. We focus primarily on technology and a variety of different marketing services, everything from creative development, project management. We work with a number of SMB clients as well as large enterprise clients that have a global footprint.
Awesome, awesome. And so today we're going to talk about those analytics, those tracking mechanisms. We know it's important for us to track, but what do we do? What does a digital marketer do with that information? How does that help them with their decision making?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think it's a key conversation or a key topic as far as what do you do with the analytics, and I think more often than not, from my experience, it's a key word or a hot topic that people want to bring up and they are continuously looking for when they're going out and starting their marketing. However, we feel a lot of, or we experience a lot of organizations fall short as far as what they actually do with those analytics. And from our perspective, that's the more important piece than what you're actually tracking. More often than not, I think, when you're talking about web or digital, for instance, or events, people will require the information that they're going to track, but they don't actually put together a plan of what they're going to do with that material once they're done and they've gathered it. So, I often talk about events, for instance. You get, all the prep work into it, you send out all of your invites, you get to the event, you track all of the people who visit your booth, and then after the event, that list of people who came to your booth goes into a drawer until your next event, and then you send them an invite out again, and there's no follow-up there. And we find that is a situation more often than not because people are so focused on getting to the execution of whether it's the event, the campaign, that there's no actual detailed plan, which is typically where those analytics are actually going to come and provide the value that you're looking for. Because if you're not acting on them, they don't do you any good. And that goes for the event, goes for the digital space as well. So there's a variety of things that I think can be, determined and can help with any of your campaigns that you're doing as you're moving forward. But having that initial set of, okay, these are the things that we want to review. These are why they're important for us as far as, trying to determine the usage rates, the audience that we're trying to go after, all of those types of things you can get with just a few metrics. And I think that's where people either don't put enough planning into it or they overcomplicate it from the start. And therefore it's just a hot mess when they actually get the data in because they don't know what to do with it.
And that's so important, Greg, because the fortune's in the follow-up. And you have to be able to have a plan of, targeting those that have visited your website or your physical booth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's where a majority of people who do that well and do it successfully end up seeing the results is in the follow-up and not in the actual action. I think campaigns are run too often where they're looking for that immediate reaction and not thinking the long term of, what's this going to look like a month out, 2 months out, 3 months out? How am I going to adjust as we get into this? And that's where the analytics come into play of, your A/B testing, all of that type of stuff to adjust as that campaign's going on. So it's not just a set it and forget it type
Right.
mentality, and then sit back and pray that, the results come in.
And it's so funny because a lot of people may start with a particular um, focus group, and then the analytics will prove that that's not the group that they've attracted.
Absolutely. Oh, and I think that happens more often than a lot
Yes.
of people would like to admit, that either the message isn't resonating with the people that they thought it was going to, or the level in which they're reaching out to, they're just not hitting that because the upfront research that they did, you know, was targeting a totally different group.
Right, right. And then that this helps them, with tracking and pivoting, right?
It helps with the pivoting, and it also helps with the evaluation as far as whether or not the campaign is working, the ROI. People often talk about that. And again, I think that's where this information will help, not only with, are we getting the success that we want, but how do we pivot where we're going to make sure that we're attracting the people that we want in the long term, so that we're not just looking for that, you know, spray and pray type mentality of, hopefully we hit one or two people, whatever the target is for this particular campaign. But as we're adjusting, as we're getting the information in, we're taking a look at it to say, okay, how can we better target the folks that we're going after, and even narrow it down to make sure that we're, really targeting the people that we want to attract.
Because back in the day, we used to say, throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks.
Yep.
Can't can't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I think that a lot of people, we do in our organization, we do basics with the analytics, right? We're not an SEO type company. We do enough to do the entry level, but there are companies out there that do nothing but specialize in analytics. That's what they're dealing with all day long. And I think a lot of people, when they enter into those discussions, are thinking that's the type of stuff that they're looking for, or more often than not, especially for people who are just starting out, Google Analytics can provide a lot of information. A lot of the tools that you're using nowadays for marketing have those basic analytics that can give you a lot of insight into the success of your campaigns, the things that you're doing, the audience that you're attracting, if you just take the time to actually go in and look at it.
And that was a question I wanted to ask. As a new digital marketer, there are tools out there that are, that'll help you in the beginning. What are some of those tools that'll help you if you're just starting out as a digital marketer?
Yeah, I think it really boils down to, what type of campaigns you're running, and what systems you're looking at, and how you're trying to integrate them in. You've got your social media management, things like Hootsuite or Sprinkler, that have a lot of that analytic information behind it. When you're talking email campaigns, you've got things like MailChimp or Graphic Mail that you can utilize. The importance is to make sure that as you're running those campaigns, that you're looking at the larger picture, and not just, oh, I sent an email out over here, and I did a LinkedIn campaign over here, and viewing those things, separately, because I do think a lot of organizations have a tendency to do that, right? And just because a message works well in email doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work well as a social campaign. And to look at those things at the same time, to make sure that entirety of the campaign is working, and that everything that you're putting out there, again, is hitting that end target, is important.
And that's what I was going to ask you. You shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket and just go with, what your MailChimp analytics show. You should use multiple ones to get a truer picture of if your campaign is doing what you want it to do, correct?
Oh, I
Or
am a
reaching the people. Yeah, reaching
Yeah,
the people
I
that you
am a
want.
firm believer in, marketing 101 works for people if they just stick to the basics. I think too
Okay.
often, particularly in the marketing field, folks want to reinvent themselves and start throwing out all these different terms of, AB and content marketing and all that. It all really boils down to repetition, timing, the messaging that you're sending out there. And to your point, yes, utilizing multiple tools, different vehicles to reach out to people, whether it's advertising, social, email, content marketing, content syndication, all of those types of things, as long as you have a realistic idea of what that time frame looks like. And they used to say somewhere around 3 to 6 weeks. In B2B for us, for instance, the sales cycle is really realistically more like 6 months, depending on how complex the solution is that you're talking about. And I think having that realistic expectation going in, again, allows you to take those analytics, view them over the long term, and adjust as you're moving forward. But it's not just planning that initial send, it's what's the last send 5, 6 months down the road that's going to ultimately get these people into, knowing who I am and what I'm selling.
Greg, I'm so glad you said that, it's a long-term game. A lot of people feel as though it should be instant, but no, it's long-term. And I like when you said, like, it's not just 6 days, it can be 6 months for you to get to the point with that consistency and using the various tools, then you get a better picture. But yeah, I'm so glad you said that because oftentimes, new marketers or clients feel I need to see that number and the term going viral.
Yeah. Anybody who's planning on going viral as a marketing strategy, I mean, it's a nice if it happens, but I wouldn't put that into a marketing plan.
I love that, Greg. I'm so glad you said that. I appreciate you. You're doing some wonderful work. You're helping people, and the analytics can tell you a lot, but it's a long game. It's not a quick fix.
Yep, absolutely.
So thank you, Greg, so very much for giving us some of your expert advice here on the One Marketing Thing podcast. And if anyone has other questions for Greg, please send an email to editor@passionatemarketers.com. So Greg, thank you so very much for just giving us a few minutes of your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we also want to thank our sponsor, Propel. It is a unique automation and management platform. Propel is the #1 tool that helps you turn those website visitors into customers. Thank you, Propel. And Greg, thank you again for joining us on the One Marketing Thing podcast.